Hi, this is Cole Richard, and I just want to explain the second session's theme. Now, the second session theme we've done is the serve. Okay, now you'll notice that we call it the serve sandwich for this session. We do a little bit of serves in the beginning of the lesson, the clinic, and then we do a little bit of serve at the end. The reason being is the service motion as a whole has a lot of rotation around the elbow, around the wrist, and around the shoulder. So there's a lot of degrees of motion behind the movement. Therefore, to prevent injury, we're not going to do too many repetitions over an extended period of time, especially when the children are just getting started and they're learning a new skill. Now, when learning a more advanced grip, like a continental grip, which is more of the knuckle being on grip number 2, that requires a lot of careful deliberation and slow movement in the beginning. That's why we start a lot of times near the service line and we're not getting them to serve near the baseline. Still on the same theme of teaching their body the ideal movement in a controlled environment. And once they get that movement down, they can move back to the baseline. We don't want to rush it. We don't want them to run before they can walk. So we're really teaching them the attention to detail on good, specific, solid foundation on their strokes, their serve and everything before they actually start playing. One of the things, you'll see 3 progressions I've been using a lot for the serve. The first progression, they start with a racket on their head, flat on their head. You'll notice that we're trying to keep a right angle over here. You'll notice that the racket is flat on the head because what I'm trying to do is it forces them to have the correct grip system here, because if they have the wrong grip, their knuckle, their wrist looks a bit awkward, but if they have a continental grip, it'll be a little bit easier. Then I get them to do a J toss. Now, if you can't really see it from this side, but if I turn this way, you'll see that there's a little bit of a J that I use. That is the J toss, and then they brush their hair, then they're going to the X, and you probably heard a lot about the X, and then they sheathe the sword. Okay, so these are the terminology we're using for them to practice, and it actually not tricks their body, but it actually gets them using first the correct grip, which is teaching them continental grip because it's awkward with an Eastern, or the advanced grip, which is the same side of the racket that's on the head, that's the same side of the racket that's going to hit the ball. X, it forces the left hand to be up here, and sheathe the sword gets the racket finishing on the correct side of the body. Okay, that's the first progression. The second progression you've seen me use is called the teapot. Okay, the teapot is where you start in a ready position, the ball is held, watch carefully, a nice dirty ball, but anyway, the ball is held just underneath the racket. I do a little bit of, you'll notice my body's pivoting a little bit, I do a small little bit of a J with my left hand, but it finishes up in a teapot. What I mean by teapot, you see the spout over here and you see the handle over here, but it actually, I curve a little bit, so it's a J teapot. I go back to the practice, then I do a J teapot, toss the ball, hit the ball X, and then finish with the follow through. So every single time that you see them serving, they're going to be practicing possibly 1 teapot, back, and then 1, and then they just go through with the serve. Okay, and that's the second progression. The third progression, what we're going to try and do is for them to actually practice an ideal movement, an ideal serve with the bouncing of the ball, and then straight after that, they actually serve the ball. So they would set up, they can bounce the ball or whatever they need to do. They will pivot, they'd go through the motion, finish the follow through, then I would ask them to bounce again, and then they would actually serve. So what happens is, every single time that they're trying to really learn this movement or a skill, they practice the ideal movement, so the body absorbs an ideal kinesthetic movement that has a template to work off. And then going forward, when they're playing tennis, they actually can teach themselves, and they actually know what we're trying to teach them. And it's a kinesthetic reference point, or they have a reference all the time. So in a way, they just kind of practice the practice. Okay, that's what I should be doing, and then they actually do it. And that way, one practice is not one practice when they do serves, it's actually 2. One ideal movement and the next. And that's why we are teaching them in a kinesthetic paradigm a lot of the time, and visual, because they are watching each other and we're really accelerating. So without them realizing it, they're actually getting a very good tennis education in a fun environment. Thank you very much.